You are listening to the Nightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening. Coming up on today's show, we'll check in on Temple basketball. Ryan Wallen of Owls 24/7 will be here to break down the Owls season to date. Ryan's standing by in the virtual green room and will join us in just a few moments. As we look around the American and men's basketball, 8th-ranked Houston leading the conference with a 6-1 record, 11-1 overall. Wichita State is in second at 4-1, 8-3 overall. Tulsa in third, 5-2 in conference, 8-4 overall. SMU at 3-2, 7-2 overall, rounding out the top four. The players of the week in men's hoops: Morris Udeze of Wichita State. He led the Shockers with 20 points, 8 rebounds, and a win over Tulsa back on January 13th. A junior forward going 6 of 7 from the field, 8 from 9 from the free throw line. And the freshman of the week, Damian Dunn of Temple. See, we're going to be talking about the Owls in timely fashion. Dunn wins the Freshman of the Week award, and he helped them to a 2-1 week, averaging 19 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 3 assists in 3 games. He scored a team-high 20 in Temple's wins over UCF on Thursday and at Tulane on Saturday. And we'll continue to talk Temple basketball. Ryan Wallen of Owls 24/7 joins us next. And the AAC Report continues right after this.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Nightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com.
All right, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show. He covers the Temple Owls for Owls247.com. Ryan Wallen is back with us to do a check-in on Temple basketball. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you? I'm
doing great. Thanks so much for being here. And, well, let's see. You know, Temple's had a lot of fits and starts to this 2020-2021 season. After some early cancellation postponements, they come out of the gate 1-2. After another postponement against Memphis, they go 2-1, including a couple of victories this past week. So a 3-3 start, but a lot of tough sledding for them to get their season and get their footing going. What are your thoughts so far?
You know, I think obviously in the world of COVID that we've had so far over the past calendar year, you know, it's been quite the challenge for all athletes as well as a lot of people just in their general lives. But, you know, Temple's done what they can. They've tried to do the best that they can to get these games in. Obviously, unfortunately, it was, like you mentioned, a slow start to the season. They had a pause right there towards the beginning of the season, which pretty much wiped out the non-conference games that they had intended to play, which up here in Philly, obviously, is the Big Five. So those games unfortunately got canceled, and they were able to luckily pick up a game there with NJIT as a last-minute kind of replacement game. They were originally supposed to schedule to play them at the beginning of the year, but that obviously got pushed back because of a pause within the program. So they did get that game in. They obviously defeated the Highlanders to start the season, and then they jumped right into the AAC slate, and they had a hard schedule at the beginning, as you can tell, playing Houston right off the bat, and then playing essentially a back-to-back against SMU that was spread out over a couple weeks, and it's apparent that those two teams are two of the best in the conference this year, with Houston being a team that looks like they're going to be a very high seed in the NCAA tournament when that rolls around in March, and SMU looking like it could be a contender for an at-large bid. So like you mentioned, though, that Temple did rebound after losing those games to SMU and Houston, and this past weekend got a win over UCF up in Philly, which was an impressive win in my book, considering the Knights, took down a Florida State team earlier in the year. Also beat Auburn. So, I thought that was a pretty impressive win, considering this is such a young Temple team with very young guards. And not a whole lot of size on the team. So that was a nice win. And then they traveled down to Tulane on a what was a makeup game from that week that they got quarantined during that Memphis week. They were able to slide in that Tulane game, thankfully, because Cincinnati got postponed against East, and Temple got postponed, who was supposed to take on ECU on Saturday, and instead they made that game up. So they looked pretty good against Tulane, I thought. Obviously jumped out to a quick 15-4 lead in that game, and they led wire to wire, never really had a threat. There were times, Tulane got close, but never were able to overtake the Owls. So Temple obviously back to 3-3 and 2-3 in the AAC, and supposed to play Cincinnati tomorrow, but now that looks like that game is postponed due to more COVID issues at Cincinnati with the Bearcats. So right now they are not slated to play again until next Wednesday against USF. There is talk that I saw from Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle that Temple might actually end up playing Houston this weekend, it looks like, as a possibility if the league decides to move that schedule around. So two teams are not sitting that long, and that would open up a date later in February then for the Owls to maybe have a makeup game with one of these teams that they've had postponements with. Yeah, but overall general assessment of the team, I think the Owls, we knew was going to be a rebuilding year. Like I said, not a very, very young team. A lot of roster turnover from last year. I believe that the number was 9 new players on this team from last year's team. So really the only carryovers were Jake Forrester, J.P. Mormon, and Devondre Perry, who actually saw substantial playing time last year, and they're all forwards. So, the whole guards, the whole backcourt, essentially is new players. So you like to see that you have a guy like Damian Dunn, who right now, redshirt freshman, is averaging 15.8 a game, and he's really shown a lot of maturity in his first full season playing for Temple. And then you've gotten some nice production from a true freshman in Jeremiah Williams out of Chicago Simeon High School, who's averaging 8.8 points per game. It's really shown that he's good with the ball, distributing. And then you have a Dartmouth transfer in Brendan Berry, who's just lit up the league so far with his three-point shooting. I believe the number, he's at 54% right now on the season for three, which is top 5 in the nation, I believe. So obviously a really excellent shooter from outside, is a constant threat to score the ball. And he's added a lot of, maturity and scoring presence to the Owls offense.
Well, of course, as you mentioned, the game this week with Cincinnati has been postponed, so we might get a date in there. If not, it would be another 11-day layoff before they would play South Florida. And it would look like if they're able to get their postponements rescheduled, that they would play something like, 14, 15 games in 40 days. That's almost like an NBA schedule.
Yeah, so my editor actually just tweeted this out not too long ago that, if Temple doesn't end up playing this week, starting with next week's game against USF, it'll be a 15-game slate in 40 days, which, if you do the math, that's a game every 2 or 3 days. That's pretty ridiculous thing that, you're a college team and you have to balance school with that as well. Some people forget that aspect of it, that, these are students that are still attending school, and they're going to be doing a lot of traveling back and forth here in the next month and a half of the season if they don't get some of these makeup games in. And, I think at this point you're worried about, the health of the players, conditioning wise, if injuries start occurring, playing that many games in a short time span, you start to worry about, the longevity and the health of your overall program, not to mention the COVID case. Whereas if you end up having to go on pause again, that really puts you in a bind that maybe some of these games just aren't going to be made up.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a chore, and the spreadsheet for not just the conference, but in college basketball just gets bigger and bigger with trying to juggle these schedules around as that goes. So that is definitely something we'll have to keep an eye on as we progress. Already mid-January, and there's lots of uncertainty in how all this is going to play out. That's for sure. So, Aaron McKie, in year number 2, what are you seeing in his growth as a coach from year 1 to year 2?
I think, and Aaron's completely admitted this as most recently as last week still, that he's still learning, the ins and outs of being a coach. He's still learning in year 2. And I think you almost have to, especially given the circumstances of the year, but also given the circumstances of the team that he has in front of him. He's, like I mentioned, he's got a very young team, and he's got to learn, how these kids are going to adjust to the college game, how to use these guys best, as he sees best fit, how he's going to run these rotations and all. But, I really think he's started to come into his own. You can see he's more calm, I think, this year. He's got a better feel for the coaching aspect of the game. Obviously, as a player, he had a long career in the NBA with the Sixers. He was a standout at Temple when he played, but it's completely different when you get to the coaching aspect. You gotta get that feel for, when maybe I should call a timeout, when I need to make substitutions. And I think he's done a pretty good job this year with managing his rotations. And you can see this team has taken on a different identity from last year's team. Last year, the team, they had more mental lapses. This year, you're still seeing some of those mental lapses, at least in the turnover aspect. But defensively, this team looks completely different. I think this team looks like it's going to be a team that prides itself on defense, similar to the old John Chaney Temple teams, that Aaron McKie played for. I think Aaron's really going for players that are going to play good defense, and they're going to try and, shut you down, similar to like a Virginia plays. They're not a team that's going to go out and score 80, 90 points every game. They're going to try and beat you defensively. And I think that's what Aaron has tried to accomplish in his recruiting and what he's tried to go out and get. Like I mentioned, I think he's made it a priority to kind of get some younger guards that are going to be some prolific scorers when they do need to score. He's made it a point to get some 3-point shooters, which Temple desperately needed over the past 2 seasons, where they've ranked towards the bottom of the country in 3-point shooting percentage and field goal percentage as a whole. So you can see that that's kind of been where his mind has been in the recruiting aspect, what he's been looking for even in the transfer market. And obviously going forward, we're going to have to see how it plays out. You hope it does for him, but we'll have to see how it plays out based on, who's going to come back next year. Maybe some of these seniors are going to come back due to circumstances with COVID and all. They might have a year that they can come back. Maybe this team makes a run for the conference title next year. I doubt it, but I would say maybe in 2 or 3 years, this team, you're going to really see a turnaround from Aaron McKie's first year and last year to then. Yeah,
and then you obviously they want to give him time to build this program as he wants to build it. And, you also look at this season as, you don't want to say the word throwaway, but it's a season because of all the uncertainty and all the challenges that go along with it, that there's obviously patience has to be, utilized as far as, how he grows the program.
Yeah, of course. And I think that this couldn't have come at a better time. Obviously, COVID is a terrible disease, but, if you're going to rebuild a program, maybe now is the season that it's ideal to do it, because people aren't expecting a whole lot from certain teams just because of circumstances. And it's hard to expect consistency when, like I said, these players and are students, and they're trying to balance school with COVID, with their team, and getting paused on and off and having to play 3 games in 6 days or whatever. So it's hard to expect, a team to do consistently well if you have all those circumstances, and then throw in the youth aspect and the rebuilding aspect of it all. So very similar to Temple football. Temple football this year was pretty bad, but maybe this was the good year to be bad, considering everything, and maybe that'll hopefully turn around for next year.
And you mentioned some of the key players already. The fact Damian Dunn's leading the team in scoring, J.P. Mormon doing nice work on the boards. This is, where do you see the depth on this team? Is it able to help them compete?
Yeah. So I think J.P. Mormon honestly has been, his numbers might not show it, even though he's averaging 8 and 7. As a senior, you'd kind of expect more from an older guy, but I think his leadership alone this year has just shown how mature of a player he is and a mature person he is. He lets these younger guys run the team, and that's fine. But when he wants, when they need a shot made or they need a key rebound, he's right in there banging, and he's going to step up at that moment. But other than that, he's not a selfish player, and he's letting these young guys step up and take the reins, because in the end they are the future of the program. He's only got this year, and maybe if he comes back, like I said, next year to play yet, but he knows these guys like Dunn and Williams, they have 4 or 5 years still to play at Temple, and they need to get their experience now if they want this program to then reach the heights that it once had been at, and contend again for an American championship. So I think he's been a stellar aspect to have. He's hit some clutch shots in clutch moments, especially in that NJIT game. I know he hit a couple clutch ones. He didn't score till late in the second half in that game, and he hit some clutch buckets to pull them away at the end. Very similar this past weekend at Tulane. He started off the game with a 3. He hit the first 3 out of the game, the second half, and then he didn't score the rest of the game. And that's fine. They didn't need him to. They needed him to be a lockdown defender, and they needed him to rebound the ball, and that's what he did. So he had an excellent game against Tulane. I think he's done an excellent job. I would say where there is a depth issue, since I've already talked about the guards and how well they've played, I would say is at that 5 spot right now. Jake Forrester had an excellent game this past weekend against Tulane. He posted his second career double-double, 15 points and 10 boards. But when you look at the numbers, that was his season high in minutes played as well at 27 minutes. And the reason for that being is he usually gets into a lot of foul trouble. And, behind him, they don't have a lot of depth at that 5 spot. They have a guy like Erasmus Parks, who's battled a shoulder injury for the past several years. He hasn't played a whole lot. And then they have a true freshman that will come in at play that 5 spot in Nick Jourdain, who, again, it's a lot to expect out of a true freshman to come in there and battle with some 7-footers when he's also only like 6'8", 6'9" at most. So the depth at that position is a little skeptical right now, and I would assume Temple tries to get a transfer there, probably heading into next year, because that is where they are lacking behind Forrester. But when Forrester can stay on the court, he's a pretty good inside the paint. I mean, he's not afraid to bang around with you. He's not afraid to go up and get rebounds, which tends to be his issue. He kind of likes to go over the back a little bit. But, he has a very nice presence inside the paint, and he's got a very good feel for the basket, and he's a good scorer when he's in there. But the key is he needs to stay on the floor more for Temple to be able to compete in games. And I think that only makes them more dangerous, is if you have him on the court, you're not forcing some of these younger guards to have to make shots outside all the time.
Have they been able to have fans in attendance?
They have not had any fans at home. The only fans that have been in attendance, I believe, are media, and then I think immediate family members are allowed to attend. But right now they are not having fans, so that obviously hurts. And I know from experience that, when the Leocourse Center is filled, it's only about a 9,000 seat arena, but that place can get popping when it's loud. So it's definitely hurt them not to, I think. But at the end of the day, every team is dealing with something similar this year. Obviously, there are some states that have different restrictions than others, but right now PA has one of the more stricter restrictions in the nation in terms of COVID. So unfortunately, this year it doesn't look like there will be fans in attendance anytime soon. I would assume that probably starting next year, they will be allowed to again have regular fans return to the arena.
Well, as of course you mentioned, this is definitely a conference that has a great team in Houston. I believe they're up to number 8 now in the rankings, and Wichita State's having a good conference season so far. Tulsa as well, and you mentioned SMU. It's a big hill to climb, and the bids are going to be rather scarce probably for the American and the NCAA tournament. As you look around the rest of this conference, what stands out to you?
I think the biggest thing is Wichita State sitting right now at second in the conference standings, because that whole situation with Greg Marshall before the season, heading into the season and all the allegations over the summer, didn't know what his status was going to be, and then he resigns or steps aside or however they want to put it. And you're getting a brand new coach there that hadn't coached these players full time before, and right now sitting at 8-3, they already have had some impressive wins this year, and sitting at 4-1 in the conference, pretty good mark early on. Considering, I think that they're looking like the Wichita State of old, and they need that, because they haven't looked like that Wichita State of old over the past couple seasons in the American. And some might wonder, are they really cut out for the conference? Are they good enough? Are they just going to be another UConn? Not to knock on UConn, but it is what it is. So I think that's a surprise. We knew Tulsa was going to be good, because they have been good the last several years, and Frank Haith has made that a pretty good program within the conference. And SMU we expected to be up there too. I think another surprise though is Memphis sitting midway through the standings when they were expected again to be a top team this year, and again they've kind of fallen short, and they're sitting barely above 500 right now. So I think that's quite the surprise that Penny Hardaway, with some of the recruits that he's been getting and the talent he has on that roster, just they aren't producing right now. And I think that if that trend continues, that's going to really hurt the conference, because they were, again, like I said, billed to be a pretty decent team this year, and probably expected to be in the top 25. And that's probably hurting the conference in terms of a bid this year. But if you can have Wichita State keep winning, maybe they'll see themselves climb into the top 25 later in the season down the road, especially if they get a win over Houston later in the year. So we'll definitely have to see with that. But and also obviously Cincinnati sitting at the bottom of the league, it just shows that the seniors that they had and they lost, like Cumberland, that they really made that team. And you worry that Cincinnati might be on the downturn, but you hope they get that turned around next year. But again, not sure what the circumstances there are fully. Haven't really talked to the Cincinnati guys in a while, so we'll have to see. And I'll obviously like to see, once Temple plays them on the court, how competitive they are, because Temple and Cincinnati have sort of developed this rivalry in basketball as well as football, I think. And if you were to say who's Temple rival in the conference, I would say it's Cincinnati. Temple hasn't beaten Cincinnati in, I believe, the last 6 or 7 meetings. It's dating back to the year that Quentin DeCozy and Jalen Bond were on the Temple Owls, and that was when I was, I believe, a sophomore in college. So it's been quite some time.
Well, Ryan, please promote the work you're doing and where people can follow you for coverage of Temple athletics.
Of course. So you can always follow me on Twitter at Ryan Wallen 247, or you can follow the Owls Daily account on Twitter at Owls Daily 247, or you can always visit us at 247sports.com/Temple.
Outstanding. Ryan, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. And
as Ryan alluded to as we recorded on Tuesday night, that looks like Temple is going to get Houston on the schedule as they are impacted by a postponement due to COVID. So the league officially announcing that those two teams will square off on Saturday afternoon. So good news there for Temple not having to wait yet another 11 days. They'll get a weekend tilt in despite all of that. Let's turn to women's basketball. Looking at the standings, 14th ranked USF is leading the conference undefeated at 7-0, 10-1 overall. They're followed in second place by UCF at 5-1, 7-2 overall. Temple at 4-2 in conference. They are 4-5 overall. And Houston 5-3 in conference in the number 4 slot, 8-4 overall there. The players of the week for women's hoops. Elisa Pinzon of South Florida was big in a non-conference road tilt, scoring a game-high 22 points against Tulane, adding 7 assists, 6 steals, and 3 rebounds in a 19-point win. Her steals total tied a conference high for the season and ranks third in the American in total turnovers per game. She leads all American players with 79 assists, 7.2 assists per game, ranked third nationally, and is also first in the conference in assist-to-turnover ratio at 4.6, which is third in the NCAA. And the freshman of the week, Jerkayla Jordan of Tulane, freshman of the week honors for the 4th time this season after a solid pair of solid performances last week in a 1-1 week. Averaged 16.5 points on 61.9% shooting and 4.5 rebounds per game in games against South Florida and Tulsa. She tallied 11 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, a block, and a steal against South Florida before going off for 22 points in the Tulsa game. And we'll be right back with a couple of notes from volleyball and men's track and field when the AAC Report comes back right after this.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fagley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Nightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Nightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Nightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this.
We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys?
My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong, spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Nightline Sports Network.
The 2020 American Athletic Conference Volleyball Preseason Coaches Poll is out, and UCF has been predicted to be the champion, garnering 10 first-place votes. Cincinnati got 1 first-place vote. The overall predicted order of finish in the East Division, UCF first with 46 points, Cincinnati second with 37 points, Temple third with 26 points, East Carolina and South Florida at 16 points for 4th place. The West Division predicted finish, SMU at number 1 with 52 points, Tulane at number 2 with 45 points, Houston number 3 with 41 points, Wichita State 4th with 26, and Tulsa 5th with 21, Memphis 6th with 11 points. McKenna Melville was voted as the preseason player of the year. She, of course, from UCF and heads up the all-conference team, which also includes Anne-Marie Watson of UCF, Armenia Heckenmuller of Cincinnati, Maria Mallon of Cincinnati, Adria Oliver of Cincinnati, Bree Wood of East Carolina, Rachel Tullis of Houston, Lily Heim of SMU, Hannah Jacobs, also from SMU, and another Mustang, Rachel Wolf, getting in there as well. Peyton Boyd from Temple, Kayla Dinkins from Tulane, and her teammate, Lexi Douglas, round out the preseason all-conference team in volleyball. Turning to men's track, Nicholas Alexander is the track athlete of the week. He won the 60-meter dash with a time of 6.71 at the H-Town Speed City Series on January 16th in Houston. His time led the American and ranked 8th in NCAA Division I after the opening weekend of competition. And the field athlete of the week is Jaden Brome from Houston. He had a win in the triple jump in his first appearance at those games, posting a winning mark of 15.61 meters. He ranks 7th on the NCAA Division I performance list to begin the season. That's going to do it for this week's show. As always, please follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88. And you can follow the Nightline Sports Network at UCF_Nightline. This has been the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.